What up, Facebook? What up, brothers? Coming to you live from the crib. It's Mike, your mentor, for ManUp Friday. We're outside tonight because the ladies decided they were going to watch a movie in the living room. So I need a little peace and quiet from Milo and Otis, the movie of the night. So we're out here on the porch, chilling. Going to get into some good stuff, right? We're talking about mentors, which are extremely important in every man's life. So thanks for tuning in. If you're watching the replay, I appreciate you checking it out and what we got going on tonight. So if you're new to this channel, a quick, or this page, whatever it's called, a quick breakdown for you. So my name is Mike King. I grew up poor, without a father who was constantly in my life, in and out of prison, and that was tough, right? It left me very vulnerable. It left me with a huge hole in my heart. I wanted to feel chosen. I wanted to feel accepted, not rejected. And those natural feelings that every person has, because they weren't filled by the role of my father, they led me into other things to get those feelings. An obsession with sports and basketball in particular, an obsession with girls, trying to fill that void. And that's carried out and played out in many areas of my life, even through my marriage, right? Trying to seek acceptance and to feel chosen by my wife. And really, there's only one person, or one person that can fill that role in your life, in my opinion, and that's God, right? And if He's in your life and He's filling that, everything else will fall into place. So this channel is basically about my search for manhood and how I found that. And it came through a very special men's group that I was a part of at a time where I was really struggling. We had just moved to Chicago. I had just exposed a huge secret to my wife, or I guess not exposed, admitted to it. And we relocated to Chicago or she was from Chicago, so I went to Chicago overnight. Didn't tell anybody, didn't tell any friends, didn't tell any family. Put all my stuff in storage, left the house that I had, quit my job, and followed my wife to Chicago to pursue her and to try to show her that I was worth fighting for. And that was tough. And I didn't really know too many people. I wasn't sure if the fight was worth it. And I was in a dark place. And I needed some help. And I found some help in this group at this church I was attending. And we went through this workbook called The Quest for Authentic Manhood. And what this really did was it exposed me to some things that I had never thought about in my life. And the saying is true, right? What you don't know, you don't know. And once these things were revealed to me and I took them serious and I thought about them and saw how they affected every part of my life, from my relationships to my work to my well-being, the dots started to connect, and I was able to start to take action and responsibility and do something about it. And my life didn't immediately get easier, it didn't immediately get better, but it gave me some hope. It gave me some encouragement, and it really helped me understand who I was and why I was the person I was and why I had made some of the decisions that I had made, because fathers play a very important role in our lives, and we all grow up with some type of wound, wound from a parent, wound from a situation. And especially as men, we tend to push that stuff down and never deal with it. So this page is an attempt for me to take the wisdom that's been planted in me over all these years by mentors in my life and through things such as this course, and to give it back to other guys, because I know what it's like to be struggling and looking for help and wanting help and not finding it in the right place or at the right time. So I hope if you're watching this that you'll watch it through to the end, and you'll take some notes, because I believe that God is going to speak something to you, and He's going to show you something that He wants you to think about. And if you don't take the time to write it down and make a note of it, then it's going to be fleeting, and you're not going to get as much out of it that you otherwise would. So, welcome to the channel. My goal is to post something, whether a video or a quote or a thought, every day of the week for all of 2019. We're already into May, almost halfway into the year, and we haven't missed a day since. So I appreciate you guys showing up here with me and doing this, because part of being a man is having other brothers around who you can do battle with. Iron sharpens iron, as one man sharpens another. So let's dive in, share my screen, and we'll get into tonight's topic. Where did we go here? Alright, screen share. Here we go. Alright, so I talked about this last week in part 1. I just shared a little bit about a couple of mentors in my life. The first mentor is my business mentor, or one of them, and that's Sam Ovens, up here in the left hand side. Just pull out your Google and type in his name. You'll learn all about him if you're curious. The man in the right has been my spiritual mentor for the last couple of years. He's no longer with us. He passed away, but Chuck Missler, you can also put him in the Google machine and find out all you want. Incredible knowledge and insight into the Bible. A quick confession here: growing up reading the Bible, for a lot of times growing up reading the Bible was extremely boring to me. I wasn't able to understand a lot of what the Bible was talking about, right? It seemed like a lot of times there was these cryptic messages. There was just things that didn't make sense. But in reality, it was no one had ever showed me how you piece those things together, and how there are mysteries in the Bible, but they're also revealed in other parts of the Bible. And if you know where to look, you can answer these tough questions that a lot of people ask when they read certain stories in the Bible. And Chuck Missler, a little background on him, right? So he was a military grad, and he was in cryptology in the military. So his mind, like, he's a code breaker. Like, that's how his mind works. And his personal hobby since he was 16 was reading the Bible. It really intrigued him. And the more he learned about cryptology, the more he applied it to the Bible, and the more he was able to connect these dots. And after his private life was done, in the workforce, where he was the CEO of 5 different defense companies, he CEO or head of the board, he retired, and he made teaching the Bible his full-time ministry. And some of the things that he's taught me and he's broken down are really plain as day, right? I mean, a child can understand it, but there are also things that can be extremely deep. And the way he's able to connect the dots between the Old passage and the New, or the Old Testament and the New Testament, and show you where God reveals all these things that He promises, you just got to take the effort and the time to look for them. Were very interesting, very thought-provoking, right? I believe that you could take anybody through his material, whether they're a believer or not, and they would definitely think twice about these stories, right, that appear in this ancient book. The third gentleman in the bottom is probably the most influential man in my life, other than my grandpa, and that's Robert Vanderpool. I don't know what'll pull up if you put him in the Google machine, but he was a heck of a guy, right? He was the father of one of my closest friends, and he lived out what real manhood was every single day, with his family, in the community, with everything that he did, not only for me but for other young men. He's an amazing man. I can't say enough about him. Words can't even describe the impact that he's had on my life. And he's shared a lot of hard experiences with me as well, and always been there for me, and sowed greatly into me. And I am the man who I am today because of what he's imparted. People talk about leaving a legacy, right? And they talk about how you want to be remembered. when you're gone, which I believe is important. But the mark of a true legacy is what you leave in other people. And Mr. Vanderpool is going to leave a tremendous legacy uh, when one day, should he go home to meet his Savior, because he's sown so much into so many men. It's just can't. I mean, there's no way to tally it up. So those are my three major mentors in my life. So let's dig in for tonight. Quick review. Last week we talked about the awesome, empowering impact of an older man. And 1 second here. Just want to move something. All right. So the first one is, why do we need mentors? Well, we need mentors because Dad can only take us so far, right? We get to an age in our life where we stop listening to Dad. We're trying to find our own way in the world, and Dad's voice becomes a little bit quieter to us. We put more stock in what other people say, and a lot of times we can put more stock into what the bad company around us, or into peer pressure, or the people we're hanging out with. They can have more authority in our lives than our father. So that's why we need a mentor, right? To point things out to us, to show us the blind spots that we have in certain areas. And we're going to listen to our mentor more than we're going to listen to our father, especially at a crucial age. I'd say between 18 and maybe 25. It's a little different for each man, but it doesn't matter if you're younger than that or if you're older than that range. It still applies. It's still true. We need mentors in our lives to point out these things to us, because these men they've lived and experienced more life than we have, and they have a tremendous amount of insight and things to give to us. The next thing is, what a mentor brings to the table. I just talked about this, but they bring wisdom through experience. Just being on the earth longer than you, because the way life operates and the stuff that life brings, the good and the bad, they've just got a bigger knowledge base to draw on, and you need to take advantage of that so that you can avoid certain catastrophes or certain pitfalls that you aren't aware of, that come at certain times in your life, or can come at certain times in your life. Right? They also bring warnings, major warnings about things. One of my mentors talked to me about the 7-year itch in your marriage. Where things kind of get to a point where if you're not intentional, the grass starts looking greener on the other side of the fence. And how you combat that by sowing into your marriage relationship and appreciating the things that your spouse does, and not take those things for granted, which is very easy to do. It's human nature, right? Because we get conditioned by them doing those things all the time, that we start to think that they're no big deal, and we don't acknowledge them. And I'm as guilty as anybody of doing that. And the next thing they bring is they bring a belief in you, right? A belief that you can do great things, and that you have greatness in you. That's one of the things I loved about Mr. Vanderpool. And he was always encouraging me. He was always lifting me up. There was times where he probably could have not put me down, is the wrong words I'm looking for, but where he could have, I guess maybe bruised my ego, or pulled the reins back on me. But he didn't. He did it in an honoring way, where out of love, he encouraged me, and he caused me to think about things. He believed in me, and I needed that at many different times in my life. And then they can cheer your achievements, and help you celebrate those major milestones in your life. Hopefully, as it's getting darker out here, I'm going to go turn on the light just in case, because I have no idea if you guys can see me or not. Not that that's important, but Let there be light, and all will be good. All right, here. Okay, and then in other instances, you know, you're going to have this proven hero. Somebody, okay, it's good. You know, it's you know, somebody that you can look up to, right? And Mr. Vanderpool, that was, for me, that was him. You know, I wanted to be like Mr. Vanderpool. I think a lot of, oh, I shouldn't say I think, we used to talk about it as kids growing up, as teenagers. You know, when we talk about guys, we talk about Mr. Vanderpool. I mean, he was that dude. I mean, he was a killer on the basketball court, and he was, you know, he's a good-looking guy. He's, you know, seemed like he had a good career, and you know what? He just walked the walk. He wasn't all about talking. He didn't try to be flashy or outshine anybody. He was just a real guy, and that was super attractive to the guys that I hung out with. You know, we wanted to be Mr. Vanderpool, so that's a good example of that. So tonight we're talking about the 10 marks of a good mentor, and this is actually taken from Dr. Howard Hendricks' As Iron Sharpens Iron book, printed by Moody Press in 1985, I guess. And all this content comes out of what I showed you at the beginning, the quest for authentic manhood. This is not my stuff. I would never claim that it was mine. This is all out of that, and now I can't think. So I got to pull it up because it's just not fair. What's going on here? I think I would know how to work this thing by now. Alright, by Dr. Robert Lewis. God, why couldn't I remember that? I've only been doing this for 5 months now. Alright, so back to the content at hand here. Hello. Alright, okay, so the first thing, right, the first thing you want to look for, or a mark of a good mentor, is this man clearly has what you personally need. And I know I've talked a lot about Mr. Vanderpool tonight, but I'm just going to keep on going. You know, Mr. Vanderpool had what I needed. You know, he had stability in his life. He had respect. He had honor. He had courage. And he had heart. And I admired all those things, and I wanted more of that in my life. I wanted that family success. I wanted to lead my kids one day. I wanted to, you know, growing up, my goal was to be the best father and the best husband that I could be. And Mr. Vanderpool was the epitome of that for me. So he had what I personally needed. He chooses to cultivate a relationship with you. You know, once again, Mr. Vanderpool, you know, he took it upon himself to sow into my life. All the lunches he took me on, all the meals we shared. You know, I remember one time when we were living in Chicago, and he came there for, every time he would come there to speak, because he was a pretty prolific speaker in a lot of conferences. Every time he would come to Chicago to speak, he would always call me, hey, let's get together for lunch. Hey, let's get together for dinner. I want to know how you're doing. I want to catch up with you, right? Like, he chose to cultivate a relationship with me, and that's never stopped, even to this day. He's always been interested in what I have going on and what I've been up to. He's willing to take a chance on you. You know, there's been times in my life where at different points, whether it's coaches, you know, and I can't think of a specific example that comes to mind, but just generally, you know, especially with like coaching, right? Like, oh, you know what? You know, I do think of an example. So I went to this camp called 5-Star Basketball Camp when I was a junior, going to be a senior. And I was assigned a camp counselor during the week. And I just did my normal junkyard dog type of basketball, hard-nosed defense, grab rebounds, make the extra pass, score a couple buckets. And my coach just loved me. He loved that I wouldn't quit and that I didn't care if I scored baskets or not. I just wanted the team to win, and I would do whatever that took. And at the end of the camp, they have an all-star game where it's the best kids in the camp get together, and each coach is supposed to nominate somebody, and he nominated me, and I ended up playing in that game and actually getting blocked pretty bad for the whole camp. uh, Holy cow! But that's another story. But just him talking to me, and I remember he talked to my high school coach because my high school coach was there, and him just telling me, hey, if I ever, he was a college coach, a Division III coach, if I ever wanted to come play with him, he would take all the guys like me that he could get, and that felt good, that he would take a chance on me because I wasn't even the best person probably on my team. There was actually another kid that played in the All-Star game that was on my team who ended up going to the University of Maryland and being like a whatever that is out there, the ACC, I think at that time, won a first team ACC, and he was a unanimous choice for the All-Star game, but some of the other coaches didn't think that I needed to be on that. But you know what? He was willing to take a chance on me, and that's all I needed. In that instance, it was a huge confidence booster for me for the rest of the summer and going into my senior year. The next mark of a good mentor is he's respected by other men. And I got to come back to Mr. Vanderpool. I mean, I've never heard one person speak bad about Mr. Vanderpool. I'm sure he's got those people out there. But whether it was at the park or whether it was anywhere else in the community, Mr. Vanderpool had the utmost respect of people. And the reason he had the utmost respect of people is because he honored those around him. One thing I always admired about him is whenever we'd play basketball, he would always take the time to shake the guys' hands on his team that he didn't know and to learn their first name. And so that he could yell out their name if he was going to pass them the ball, right? He was making that personal connection, and he did that everywhere he went. He flashed them his big pearly smile and stuck out his big old hand and said, "Hey, I'm Bob. Nice to meet you." And people loved him because he was gracious, and there's a lot to be said for that. He has a network of resources. I mean, that's just given. I wouldn't say that's given, but the mentors in my life, they've been kind enough to open up their network, whether it's referring me to counselors, whether it's referring me to other resources business-wise, or my grandpa would always say, it's not what you know in life, it's who you know, and that's extremely true. And every mentor that I've had has used their influence in some way to make my life better, whether that's an introduction or through an opportunity, and they were happy to do so. He is consulted by others. You want to have a mentor that is being sought out by other people because that's a sign that they're wise and that what they have to say matters. Now you have to be discerning about this because there's a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge and that are being, especially in today's day and age with social media, they're being consulted, but they might be being consulted for the wrong reason, right? A big thing in our society is a lot of people want to get famous. And how do you get famous? You're on social media yelling and screaming, and I don't mean literally, I just mean you're talking about yourself everywhere you go, and I understand part of that is necessary, but you got to think with the end in mind, right? What's the goal? What's the goal of all that? What substance is this person who's being consulted by others? What do they have to offer? So just be discerning about that, whoever you choose to follow, and whoever you choose to look up to as a mentor. The seventh sign is he both talks and listens. The best mentors, they do that. They talk and they listen. I'd say they probably listen first and talk second. I know I shared a story before the other week about how I went to this uh, counselor slash therapist, and he talked almost the whole time. And he would ask me a question, I would start talking, and then he would just kind of gently interrupt and just go on for like 5 or 10 minutes. And after about the third session, I stopped going because I realized this guy wasn't going to change. He was just always going to talk, and there was things that I needed to share and get off my chest and go deeper in, and I wasn't having the opportunity to do that. So I know this seems simple in common sense, but in today's world, common sense is a very uncommon thing. Number 8, he is consistent in his lifestyle. He is not wavering, and I just goes back to Mr. Vanderpool. Uh, he's the same today as he was when I first met him, as he was every single day growing up, in his character and in his behaviors. And the crazy thing about this, right, is like there was a show called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and you can Google Mr. Rogers. There's all these stories about him being like an ex-sniper and all that stuff. I don't know if that's true, but he had this kids show, and every day he would do the exact same thing. He'd open the door, right, and he'd come through the door, and then he'd take off his jacket, left sleeve first, then right sleeve, and then he'd hang it up on a hook, and then he'd greet the children, and then he'd come in. And someone asked him after all the years, it was like one of the longest running children's show in history, why he did that. And he said the majority of his audience did not have any type of consistent influence in their life, in their family life. And he knew that that was part of his role, was to be consistent every day, because kids need consistency, right? It provides them stability, and other such things. So he would do the exact same thing every single time, so that the kids knew what to expect, and then they would feel comfortable, and they would be more engaged, and for a lot of other multitude of reasons. So you want to find someone who's consistent, right? No one wants to ride the roller coaster of drama, the ebbs and flows of somebody whose life is all over the place, in chaotic, and has turmoil. That doesn't mean you don't go through hard things, but what is your emotional IQ, right? What does their emotional IQ look like? Is it low? Is it high? Is it lower than yours? I'd offer up that it should be higher than yours, right? That it's something that you should want to attain. You should want to one day be on their level. The Bible says bad company corrupts good character, right? You are the person you are because of the people you surround yourself with. So think about that. Number 9, he is able to diagnose your real needs. And this just goes back to one of the creeds in my life that my grandpa taught me, was real friends tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And when you think of a mentor, they're going to do that. They're going to tell you what you need to hear. They know after listening to you what you're missing in your life, and they're going to speak that to you out of love. Have you considered this? Have you considered doing that? I've had the opportunity to mentor and to speak with both younger guys and older guys who are facing divorce, and I think, well, I shouldn't think, I know they appreciate when they're telling me these stories about how they've ended up in the position that they've ended up in with their spouses, and they're seeing 80% of the picture. They're missing, or 90% maybe, and they're missing that 10% that could make all the difference. And because like because I've been there before and I know what that's like, to be able to tell them, hey man, I know you're looking at this, but that's not really what you need. I want to propose to you that this is really what you need, and this is really what you're looking for, and to spell that out for them, and to have, you can see the wheels in their head turning, and then to have that light bulb moment where they're like, aha, yeah, you know what, I never did recognize that, or I never thought of it like that, or I never knew that, right? It's huge. It's a complete game changer. And you want a mentor in your life, right, that can look at your situation and really diagnose what it is exactly you need. And this isn't theory, right? This is real, practical advice that comes from experience. So finally, the last one, and we'll wrap this up. He's concerned with your interests, right? There's a lot of people out there that want to talk just to hear themselves talk, and they feel good because they get a chance to talk and talk about what they know, what they've done. Um, but I say, are they doing that because of themselves, or are they doing that because they have someone else's best interest in mind? And I'm not here to judge anybody, and I'm speaking to myself because I'm just reminding myself, like, what are my motives motives behind what I do, right? And I never want them to be out of selfishness. I should say, I never want to try. I never want for. I can't even talk tonight. You get what I'm trying to say. So, you want to make sure that that person is concerned with your interests, because if it's all about them, or if it's mostly about them, you're not going to get anything out of it, and they're actually not going to get anything out of it being your mentor. So they want to be concerned with your interest and how they can help you move forward in life through whatever phase of life that you're in. So this is the last quote, right, that I had written in my book from this course so long ago, and that's, young men want an older man to do life with. And that's so true. And I talked about this a little bit last week, how the older men think that they have less to offer, the younger men, this generation that's coming up. And that's so not true, right? Like, guys want to be around guys. Guys want to know what, manhood looks like. They want to know, different things that this older generation can give to us and can sow back in us and can teach us. You know, um, I was had the opportunity today to be on a call between one of the people that I'm helping consult and one of their clients. And after the call was over, just to be able to ask this person more questions about their specific field of knowledge was so interesting to me, and I just love that I got to pick this person's brain. And I just think about all the years that they've been doing what they've been doing, and this knowledge base that they've built up, that they have inside, and how privileged I was to be able to glean from that and to learn from that. So it's true, older men, we have a lot to offer, and we need to step up, and we need to start to offer that, and to look for potential proteges, or people that we can mentor in different situations, and give back. So that's it for tonight. I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me as always. Try to make this stuff good for you, and as life-changing for you guys as it was for me when I was going through this course. I hope you took some good notes. I hope you're referring back to it. I hope you're thinking about it. I hope that you're having these conversations with men you trust, and saying, hey, like, have you ever thought about, like, what kind of father you had? Like, if your father was dead and gone, like, what would you think about him? What would you say about him? Or maybe the conversation goes like this. If you have kids of your own, hey, what do you think your kids would say about you if they were at your funeral? Those types of things, right? You're actually pondering this information and thinking about it. So I appreciate you guys watching this. If I can ever help anybody or do anything for you, you need somebody to listen to, someone to listen to you and not judge you, and maybe help point out some blind spots. It'd be my privilege to do that with you. You can just hit me up, PM me, we can work something out, Skype call, there's all kinds of communication these days, ways to get that done, so don't be shy. And for the people that have hit me up, I applaud your courage. and I respect you for reaching out and not doing what men tend to do and say, I'm going to figure this out on my own. Because isolation and that mentality can be very dangerous and foolish. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Saturday shout out. Have a good night. Love you guys. Later.